the bump and run, the Bristol move.
That's aggressive, but that's good. Good hard racing. Oh! He puts him out of the groove there. Oh, man!
Will he get the bumper? Yes, he does. Here comes Logano. Logano on the inside. A drag race. They're sideways. And it's going to be Logano getting the win.
The back end of the 18. Kick out.
Yeah, he got into it. Moved him out of the way. Just got the lead.
It's almost too early to be racing that hard for the lead, wasn't it?
Never too early to be racing for the lead.
At Bristol.
At Bristol.
Man, this is one of the biggest wins of my career.
It's the bump and run,
Baby!
Oh, yeah. Welcome to the Bump and Run podcast. I'm your host, Michael D. White, joined by my two best friends, Matt the Statman Reilly and Eric at Daytona Ron. Hope you guys had a great weekend. Hope you guys had yourselves a Joey Logano type of weekend. He was the big winner in the ATL. I know, boo Logano. Oh my God. Of course Joey Logano won. Of course Joey Logano won that race. Anyways, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Podcast available on all platforms every Monday night. Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and more. And every Tuesday morning video available on YouTube. And you want to know, it's been a while since I gave a shout out to all the friends of the show. So big shout out to all the friends of the show. Make sure you give us a little comment. Race Scrub, love your comments. Charlie Warner, haven't heard a comment from you since the Clash. He wasn't happy about the Clash. Love to hear what you thought about Atlanta. Robbie Shredder, Shrey, Justin Pierce, Jay Doherty, all the bros that listen, Luke Birdie and whatnot.
My dad.
Mr. Reilly, of course, the dad of the show. My mother listens every, she watches on Tuesday. She likes to see our silly faces and see what we do in the background to crack each other. But yeah, make sure you like, share, subscribe. Tell all your friends about the podcast too. Bump the letter and run pod.com. Bump the letter and run pod on Twitter. Fellas, how was your weekend? How did you enjoy the non-racing weekend? You guys have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was kind of quiet for me. I usually go out on Fridays. I decided to take this Friday off, and my girlfriend and I, I know it's late, but we were watching Game of Thrones, so we had 2 episodes left, and we decided to, hunker down this weekend and watch some Game of Thrones and have a little bit different of a weekend instead of going out. And it was enjoyable. It was nice to stay home and relax and get the batteries charged up again.
What did you think about Game of Thrones? I never saw it before. Bree's a big fan. I don't know.
It was a great series. Like everything that I've ever heard, or the hype when it was coming up and in its heyday was it lived up to it for sure. I know people hated the ending, and I had just watched the ending, but I'm more of a realistic person when it comes to like stuff like that, so it made sense to me.
Yeah.
The way it sense. I think people were looking for more of a gruesome or a crazy or something wild, like a M. Night Shyamalan type of ending to it. But it was, I think the problem is because the last couple episodes were crazy. It's the war is going on and it's all, high intense. And then the last episode, it kind of it wasn't that in a way, it kind of ended just like, this is it. I was okay with it, but overall the series was, it was great.
How about you, Matt? How was your weekend?
Well, much like Eric, I did a lot of relaxing. Thursday heading into the weekend, I had a minor procedure done on my knee. So tore my meniscus, had to get that fixed up and cleaned up. So it was a lot of relaxation or trying to relax, trying to recover and do all that. So did a lot of bit of that this weekend.
Yeah, I did some relaxing myself too. Friday we didn't do much. Saturday we went out to dinner with my mother. That was a good time. And then Sunday, of course, did the grocery shopping. Stopped at my mother's house before the race and then got the race in. So it was a nice easy Sunday and a nice easy weekend. I feel like we probably all needed a nice relaxing one. I feel like I feel like the three of us were always going.
My body was telling me slow it down.
There you go. You guys want to jump right into the NASCAR news? They'll get into the race weekend and whatnot.
The Bump and Run NASCAR news.
Just a couple stories. The major story from last week, and we kind of touched on it last podcast before any actual like penalties and whatnot were assessed. But of course, we talked about the louvers last week. Hendrick Motorsports got busted for modifying some hood louvers, and that's basically the air coming out of the engine and whatnot. And Hendrick Motorsports was penalized for all 4 of their cars for the louvers. They are appealing it, but they also served part of their suspension with some replacement crew chiefs this week. I didn't see much of a difference in the performance of Hendrick. What do you guys think about the major fine? Because everyone's real defensive. I don't know if you saw Jeff Gordon on the pre-show or any of the Chad Knaus interviews and stuff, but they're basically sticking to their guns where they're like, these parts don't fit. They're not up to the standard that they're supposed to come to us, and we had to adjust them to make them fit, and everyone in the garage is doing it. So what do you guys think about that whole thing?
I really don't think it's that big of a deal if it wasn't that big of an advantage. I want to know the numbers on the advantage. Was it giving them an aero advantage, causing that air to go underneath? Was it cooling the engine a little bit more than it would? Is it sending air into the brakes and keeping the brakes cooler, giving you a little bit more grip? I don't know any of that information. I'd love to know that if they had any data on why, those louvers, they obviously were a crucial part of the aerodynamics if it's that harsh of a penalty. Yeah. But to me, like Jeff Gordon could say that all he wants. There's a procedure in place from day one that says if something goes wrong, just let us know. We'll come in. We'll say this is that, and no, you don't use it or use this one. They had to do one simple step. Call NASCAR, communicate with NASCAR. They didn't do it. And I heard Brad Keselowski say they had a ton of stuff where they called NASCAR in and it was, they came in, no, you don't use this, use that. It was simple. Yeah. So other teams might be having the same issue with parts not fitting. I think that's a guaranteed you're going to get that. But what these other teams are doing is checking up with NASCAR and informing them that they are not fitting and asking them what they do. And Hendrick just, in my eyes, from what they said, they went on, they didn't ask NASCAR. They didn't get those parts approved, just like Eric Jones last year at Pocono. They fixed the fender. They never had NASCAR re-look at it before they put it on his car, and he got fined 100 points last year. So one simple step, call NASCAR if you see something wrong.
They're saying all of that is in a gray area, and they thought that they were playing in the rules and whatnot too. So who knows?
I think it's going to come down to just like with Denny, it's going to come down to what the rule specifically says, and if they have any kind of wiggle. Now, to my thing is, I think we've talked about this plenty of times on the show. You're a team, you get a penalty, you're gonna appeal it. You're gonna at least try to appeal it. Most of the time, the appeals they don't go your way as a race team. NASCAR normally wins those, so I don't blame them for appealing it. Part of me thinks that they're just not going to get away with it, and that's why they're going through with the crew chiefs and that stuff now because. I don't see them reversing it.
How about you, Matt, since you're the resident Hendrick fan of the group?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything that Eric said there, too. I mean, it all comes down to communication. Like Eric said, Brad Keselowski was very vocal about that, too. Hey, NASCAR, we got something we got a question about. Before we do anything, how about you come take a look at it and either prove it or deny it on your end so we know going forward. It also comes down to, I am not, you guys know me, on a personal level. I'm not, a follow the rules rule book kind of guy, per se. I like to walk that line. But Hendrick, guys, NASCAR is very clear with these new cars from the very beginning. And as a matter of fact, speaking of Brad, they made their point known last year at the beginning of the season. If you mess with anything on this car, we're going to go ahead and hand you a fine. We're not going to take it lightly. Hendrick did something. They changed something. Whether it fits and, they're saying their hands were tied. They had to do something to make it work. There's ways around it where they probably didn't have to go about it the way they did, and they got fined. So, yeah, they're going to appeal it. They have to appeal it. Like Eric said, you're going to appeal it. Why wouldn't you? Maybe NASCAR will review it and say, no, you know what, Hendrick, you're right. Our bad this time, but I don't think so. I think that the penalty will probably stand, and now they know. I mean, as far as a competition standpoint, listen, They caught that before the race last week, and Hendrick still dominated. Hendrick still had cars. Hendrick still won the race. So, whether it had, I'm sure it had some sort of advantage to it, or maybe it didn't at all. Maybe they just did it so it could fit those, where it needed to fit. But either way, they got popped, and going forward, you can't mess with things without NASCAR's approval.
This to me, sorry, Wade. This to me seems like you get a new district attorney in town, and they're trying to use somebody up as like a scapegoat. Or here, I'm gonna use you as an example. I'm gonna throw the book at you so that no one else even thinks about doing it. That's how this comes off to me. Is like, hey, with the Keselowski thing last year, Matt, perfect example. Hey, beginning of the season, this is the way we're gonna police this. And it's still early enough now where it's like, hey, guess what? This is how we're going to police this. So whether or not, like you're saying, Matt, if there was an advantage, I don't think that mattered. I think it was more of like hey, this is our rule system. This is our penalty system. This is how we tier it. And this is how we're going to enforce it as far as a zero tolerance. So I still would like to see the numbers on if it was an advantage or not.
Yeah, it should be super interesting to see what happens in the whole appeals process. And for the people at home, if you don't know how the appeals process works, it's basically like you're presenting a case in court, and the judge isn't NASCAR. Like they're not fighting their case against NASCAR.
It's a panel that is not NASCAR officials.
Yeah, it's like third-party officials from other sanctioning bodies within motorsports, whether it be like short track promoters, stuff like that. So it is going. They both have to plead their case to a board. So we could see something happen. Maybe if they could show some communications between them and NASCAR where it's like, oh yeah, you could do it here. And then they kind of be like, well, you approved it for us on this day and we've been doing it ever since, one of those types of deals. So it should be pretty interesting. Let's see. Speaking of penalties, Denny Hamlin decided he will appeal the Phoenix penalty that resulted after he said on his podcast that he intentionally wrecked Ross Chastain. So that one, originally he said he wasn't going to appeal it. Then he changed his mind after they did come out with a penalty. And if you listen to his podcast today, Actions Detrimental, he kind of explained why he decided to fight the penalty and whatnot, and it kind of comes down to verbiage and whatnot. So Denny will be going and pleading his case in front of a panel as well. And then let's see, speaking of panels, one we've been watching for a long time now, the Nashville Fair Board approved the plan to renovate the fairgrounds for a NASCAR race. Now it needs to pass through the Metropolitan Sports Authority and Nashville Metro Council before anything could happen. So more red tape in Nashville. Hopefully they get it all sorted out, because I would love to see a NASCAR race in Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway there. The SRX series went, and it was an awesome race.
That's the only thing that I have to go off of is that Nashville SRX race. And that was a fantastic race. And the track itself had a lot of characteristics to it, and people seem to love it, or drivers rather seem to love it. So yeah, I'm rooting hard to get a Nashville Fairgrounds race.
Yeah, me too. It was a very fast short track, if that makes sense. And it was a lot of fun to watch. And then the last piece of news, Kevin Harvick's going to run the number 29 for the All-Star race, which is also on a short track coming back to North Wilkesboro. He's going to be running a Busch tribute to the old Goodwrench scheme when he made his debut, of course, replacing the late, great Dale Earnhardt. What do you guys think about that Kevin Harvick number 29 throwback for the All-Star race?
Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. 2 thumbs way up for that. Yeah.
10 out of 10 paint scheme. It makes me wonder now, though, because of course Darlington for the longest time had the throwback race in Labor Day weekend, and now then they moved it to the spring race, where I think that
killed throwback weekend for me. That's a hill I am willing to die on. Them moving the throwback race to the first Darlington race of the season instead of Labor Day weekend.
Do you think
I agree, Matt. I agree.
Do you think we see teams elect to do throwbacks for the All-Star race instead of Darlington now? Do you think Kevin Harvick's going to start the trend here?
No, I think it's just because it's his last year. I think
Yeah.
that's probably why they're doing it. I don't see it switching. I know they like to do changes at the All-Star race and change it up a little bit, but there was no announcement that they're not doing the throwback weekend in Darlington. So it makes me seem like why try to steal that gimmick without announcing it first?
Yeah. See, I'm kind of hoping that the teams themselves take it upon themselves to be like, yeah, let's run the throwbacks here instead. And then they just kind of scrap the Darlington throwback weekend altogether. Cause like Matt said,
move it back to
I'm
Labor
over it.
Day weekend, man. Labor Day weekend. I'm going to get in the weeds here. I just am for 20 seconds. Labor Day weekend. It's the end of the summer. It's got that throwback feel good vibe. It's the last time you're grilling out with your buddies for the summer. It's just such a throwback weekend. I just love Labor Day weekend, and that throwback race belongs there. And the fact that it's in like whatever May, like the middle of May or whenever it is now, it's just like or April, whenever the hell it is.
It's
just
Mother's Day weekend. Changes.
When I
Right?
hear like Southern 500, like I think Labor Day,
Yes.
hot weather, just NASCAR, just just that to me is the vibe of that race, and you can't recreate that vibe in May. You can't.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
I agree. But that's all I have for NASCAR news, unless you guys saw any news stories throughout the day that I might have missed.
I did not.
All right, then let's
been slacking on the news.
That's okay. Let's move on to the this week in NASCAR. Of course, we had Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Doubleheader on Saturday with Trucks and Xfinity. Christian Eckes led 2 times for 35 laps. He was the big winner. And then Austin Hill led 3 times for 103 laps in the Xfinity race, getting his 3rd win of the season in only the 4th race of the season. Did you guys get a chance to watch any of the races on Saturday?
I didn't get to watch the Truck Series, but I did tune into the Xfinity Series race. But I just couldn't get to the end of it. I was watching it and just caution after caution. I was on the wine already at a family dinner, and it was just like I just couldn't stay focused on it because like, oh caution, I put my phone down. I'm starting to talk with family, whatever, and your bullshit. And next thing you know, you look back, oh, we're going green again, and it's like, oh, it's a caution again. I'm like, at a certain point, I just got, okay, it is what it is.
Yeah, it was a big old wreck fest in both races, and I just gave up on kind of paying attention to them, to be honest with you. How about you, Matt? Did you about the same?
Yeah, about the same. Yeah, about the same.
I remember texting you guys about it. I don't know what lap that was, Matt. When I remember texting you guys or snapping you guys like, oh, like Xfinity race or something, and like there was still quite a bit of laps left, and it was just, I don't know, like. Even like Sunday we'll get to, there wasn't good enough to keep me around. I don't know.
Yeah, I think someone did the math, and it's something like 40% of both races were spent under caution, or at least the Xfinity race. So it was like 40% of the race was under caution.
The only thing that I would love to park on for a second for the Xfinity race is the Josh Williams debacle.
Oh yeah.
I want to give that guy a round of applause. That is what I am here for, man. Like that is what I'm here for. Yeah, like that dude is gonna get. As a matter of fact, Bob Pockris. Somebody just asked Bob Pockris on Twitter, like because Bob released the entry list for COTA for next weekend, and Josh Williams is on that. So one of the fans just said like, oh, so I guess Josh isn't suspended, and Bob said no. Anything that's going to happen, if anything is to happen, is going to come down tomorrow. I'm assuming he probably will get suspended or a heavy fine. He pissed off a lot of NASCAR brass there. So for anyone who doesn't know, I guess Williams was involved in a little bit of an incident, and there was something coming off his car, flying off his car, tape or something. It was
like bare bond strips, yeah.
Yeah, and so NASCAR said, hey, you're parked until you get that fixed. So I guess Josh just decided, I'm going to go ahead and park my car on the front stretch at the start-finish line, and I'm going to walk my ass through the grass. And then, as he was going, he threw up the deuces. He threw up the deuces to the crowd.
Yeah.
And,
great.
And then they interviewed him as soon as he got on the pit road, and they said, well, what about a fine? And Josh is like, I don't care about no fine. I don't have any money to pay that anyway.
So,
and then they kept him in the in the NASCAR hauler, I think I saw like 2.5 hours.
2.5
they had
hours.
him in there.
Well, it was until the race ended. They kept him in there until the race ended. So the I forget, it wasn't Elton
was in the
Sawyer.
principal's office.
Yeah. But whatchamacallit, I was listening to the morning drive this morning and he called in and he basically said, like, when he waved, he was waving to his buddies in the flag stand because he knew the officials and stuff. And then the crowd just went nuts. And so, like, then he kept waving and it just kind of snowballed from there. But yeah, super entertaining. I'm expecting a huge penalty over that one. Huge fines because
you know what though, dude? Like, we always talk about it on this podcast. Personalities, like go against the grain, like they used to do in the 80s and 90s. Like, that's what we need. Like Josh Williams. Oh yeah. Thank you. Do not change. Continue being that guy.
And
so,
then,
like, what? Why didn't they let him come down pit road, put another piece of tape on, and keep going? Like, what? Like, why did they tell him to park? Like, what was their?
So I guess so. Listening to Denny Hamlin's podcast today, he said they were already over like the TV window or whatever. It was just caution after caution, and the bear bond delayed the caution once again, and so they're like, just fucking park this guy. So they could get the show on the road.
Fuck that, dude. That's bullshit.
Yeah. And so they parked him, and that's why he was pissed off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and Denny said he paid a fine too. So I was pumped about that. I saw.
Yeah.
Denny apparently just doesn't care about money. I think that's what we've surmised over the past 7 days.
Well,
Denny doesn't give a shit about money.
Yeah.
I mean,
FedEx is just giving him a shit ton on the side.
Well, I mean, he's won how many Daytona 500s and how many races with Joe Gibbs? I know he doesn't have a championship, but I'm sure he's getting paid just as high as any champion is.
He's got that old school driver money too. Back when they got paid a lot more than they get paid now.
So, speaking of getting paid, Joey Logano taking his win to the pay window. He led 5 times for 140 laps. The race lasted 2 hours, 53 minutes, and 5 seconds. We saw 5 cautions in that race, so pretty tame. 20 lead changes among 13 different drivers. Your top 5, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Christopher Bell, Corey LaJoie, and Tyler Reddick, rounding out the top 5. You got
2 hours, 53 minutes. That is perfect.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice race length. It was done way quicker than I thought it was going to be. Of course, because of the lack of cautions and the lack of giant wrecks. No red flag at this one, so I was pretty happy about that one. Let's jump into the race grade, see what you guys thought about it.
It's our NASCAR weekend race grade.
So let's start with Eric. Let's go with Eric this week.
All right, I gave it a C. I just thought this is your typical C race that I give. It's just, it seems to be a pattern this year for me. Stage 1, stage 2, non-existent, and stage 3 is when the racing actually starts.
Yeah.
And, to me, not enough to go above a C because I want to see something all race long. To me, the first 2 stages was pointless. Let's make these races 100 laps, and then then we might see some action all race long. But to me, it comes down to it again. 20 lead changes among 13 drivers. That's a C race.
Yeah.
I go back through my notes. That's a C race. Last year, we had 46 lead changes among 20 drivers.
That's insane. That's insanity.
So, to me, right then and there, they were racing more last year. And last year, they were racing more when there was a parts shortage. They didn't know if they were going to be. They were even more aggressive last year when they only had 1 car in the garage.
That's true.
This year, they have more than that. There's no part shortage. And they were way more, calm in those first 2 stages than they were last year. So it's like, the racing, it went down from last year's race was better than this year's race. And, I gave last year's race a B or a B minus. And I have to go down from that because it just wasn't as entertaining. Yes, the 3rd stage picked up. The last 40 laps or so, there was racing going on. But to me, if I'm going to stay true to what I'm doing here as far as grades and races, it just fell into that C category. And I enjoyed that 3rd stage is what I really want to get across. I'm not saying Atlanta was a bad race by any means. It was just I needed to see a little bit more for a little longer, I guess.
Yeah.
But overall, it was enough at the end to not make me sad after, or like, oh man, we have to go on the podcast talk about this race. It wasn't a complete washout. 2015 went to Atlanta, 85 laps to go, up to 13th was lapped. Fourth place was 18 seconds back. So I think I'd rather take this C race that we saw on Sunday in my eyes than that race I was actually at in 2015. So I just can't complain about it at all. But, based off of what the racing is today and what I saw last year from this same exact track with this new car, I didn't see as good of a product as I did last year.
All right, I respect it. I respect the opinion and the train of thought. I think that's all valid points. How about you, Matt? What'd you think of it?
I definitely agree with Eric with last year was better than this year. And I think some of that has to do with expectations. Last year with this new Atlanta Super Speedway hybrid type racing, we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. And then it ended up being awesome, where this year we kind of had our expectations raised and we were waiting for an amazing race to break out and just never really did. I gave my grade slightly above Eric's. I gave it a B. I thought for what it was fun. I told Eric before we got on the pod today, it was one of those races that it kept me engaged. I wasn't, looking at my phone. I wasn't, doing shit around the house. Like, I was watching the race. It kept me engaged enough, but it didn't get me to the edge of the couch. So that's kind of where we stood, for it being Atlanta, it was a lot more exciting. Like Eric just said, it was a lot more exciting than Atlanta used to be. It's a hybrid style of racing that I do enjoy. I love super speedway racing. I get it. It's not the pure racing, but that's the cool thing about our form of motorsport with stock car NASCAR racing is seemingly every week we get a different style of racing, which keeps it fresh. Next week we go to a world-class road course facility in COTA, and followed by a string of short tracks, followed by Talladega. We get so much difference in our schedule where we're going to have different styles and types of racing for the most part every week. So I love the uniqueness that we get week in and week out. It's not stale. Some races are better than others. I am a little concerned that we haven't gotten an A+ race yet. I'm looking at my grades, haven't given anything plus yet. I think we gave Daytona an A, or I gave a track a race an A. But other than that, it was probably Fontana. I forget whichever way. Nothing's gotten an A+ yet. And by this time last year, I think we had 3 or 4 A+.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
We were handing them out like candy last year too, though. That's the thing.
We were,
yeah.
No, but why? See,
but the races were that good.
I'm writing it down, just whatever this. It's making sense,
No,
So I don't know what the deal is this year. Eric and I have a theory that we will get into in a little bit about NASCAR and changes and things like that, but. It was a B race. I would have liked to see more. COTA next week, like I said. Then the short tracks coming up. We've got 3 boom, boom, boom right in a row with this new short track package that I'm praying to God they fix. And then Talladega, and then Dover, which we're all going to be at. So we've got a really exciting, or a potential for exciting, next 2 months of NASCAR racing here.
All right. I gave it a B+. I thought it was really good. I thought it was a pretty good race. I really enjoyed the nice clean finish. That actually did a lot for my score, where I was like, okay, they proved that they could run real nice and clean. We don't have to have a wreck fest. I'm still kind of on the fence how I feel about the reconfiguration though. Like last year, if you go back to this episode last year, I didn't even know what to give it as a grade.
Yeah, I remember that
for the spring race. And then the summer race, I kind of struggled too, where I was like, yeah, I guess it's good. Now I'm like, yeah, I think it's good, but I don't know. I could have just as easily given it a C for all the same reasons, where I'm like, I don't know if I like this, but I'm just kind of oh, well, at least it was an entertaining race. It was fun. I guess we got to call it drafting racing, not hybrid racing now. I kept hearing that word thrown a lot. I don't know how I feel about
What did you guys feel about them moving the pit entry? I thought that was weird.
I thought it was pretty interesting.
And I think it's dangerous, to be honest with you.
Was there a good reason why they did that?
Yeah,
just to shake it up, I feel like.
No, it was for safety reasons, getting onto pit road during green flag stops, because it's such a short like transition where like they just.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I'll blow that safety thing to smithereens. I think it's worse. I think it's actually the opposite, where now you're pitting coming into turn 3 there. You're going a whole entire turn at pit road speed while everyone else is flying by in a super speedway, and one little shitty wreck, you're a sitting duck down on the apron.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Think about it. A pack comes up on 2 or 3 cars that are pitting, and they're going 65 miles an hour because they're past the commitment line, and all hell breaks loose, and they wreck into cars going 170 miles an hour into cars going 60 miles an hour. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from there.
That's why I thought it was weird. Like, I'm like, man, they're taking forever to get around. They're going slow, and just I wouldn't complain, but just because it's the pack style racing, anything could go wrong at that highest speeds. And I just thought they were sitting ducks at the bottom on the apron.
I was just surprised there wasn't more pit road speeding penalties and stuff than there was. I mean, there was a couple, but
I think people were afraid. I mean, you're going down. I mean, because you lose 2 laps easy.
Yep. Oh yeah.
It's just different. Like what they're doing with Atlanta altogether, it's different. And I know, again, we're going to get into this in a little bit. There's a lot of complaints going on social media, between media and fans alike. There's a lot of, I didn't really ask my dad. My dad's an old school NASCAR fan, and he's been pretty good with keeping up with the changes and accepting the changes. But I wonder how he feels, because Atlanta used to be like one of those, it used to be where we finished our season every year. Atlanta was one of those old school staple tracks where they've completely changed it. And, I'm assuming a lot of the old school fans are not okay with it.
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't even know where to go with my thoughts on this one, because I feel the same, where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I really like the super speedway type racing on Atlanta, but at the same time, I fucking hate it. The last race we had there too, where Kyle Larson dominated, and to Eric's point, you have a 15-second gap between first and fourth, and everyone from 13th to first is the only one on the lead lap too. Here's
where I'll sit on it, is that, again, it's unique, and I like unique. I like that. It's fresh. Like yesterday, it wasn't just a 1.5 mile race that we got. It was a little different. Now it's not going to be for everyone. It's only going to be for a certain taste of people, but at the end of the day, it's unique, and I like that. It's now Atlanta has got its own identity. People have to stop comparing it to Daytona and Talladega, because yes, it's drafting racing or plate racing or whatever the hell you want to call it, but it's a different style of racing. It's a smaller track. It's tighter. It's a tighter track. So it's different than your Daytona and your Talladega. It looks different. It feels different than your Daytona and your Talladega. It's its own track. It's unique.
I think.
I just think as you're not always going to have that amazing race. I think I've come to appreciate. I think I see where these more old school fans come from, where I think they appreciated a dominant car more than we do as fans today. I think they appreciated that in a way, oh, that guy went out and dominated, and they focused on that car dominating, and they, all that went into that, hey, they were above.
Ned Jarrett went out and whooped the field. He passed everyone by 2 laps.
Right. And everyone's like, oh my God, did you see Ned Jarrett? Oh my, he won that race by 2 laps. What an amazing, dominant performance. And, all the other drivers have been we had nothing for Ned today. That was shit. We were we couldn't do anything. So I just think I'm trying to change my mentality. Cause Matt's saying, we can't think of it as Daytona, Talladega. We have to think of it maybe not as a different track, but just I think just as a race fan, we might just have to start changing the way
it's its own animal. It's just different.
Just to appreciate greatness when certain races are going to have, finish within a tenth of a second. Some races are going to have a 10-second finish, but each of those races, you could find something that was dominant and that, what made it a good race. And I think sometimes we just want to, we have everything at our fingertips nowadays. And I think it's just something that bothers us as fans, that it's like, oh, I don't know. It's the mentality, I think.
I'll tell you what bothers me. D-shaped ovals. I think I just want a true oval 1.5 miles to come back. We have one left. It's Homestead, you have
Bruton Smith to thank for that. That was his staple.
Yeah. And even you brought up your dad and the old school fan. This is the third version of Atlanta we had. If you go back to the 80s and early 90s, it was a true oval. And I want to see that return, I would love to see them do that with Texas, but I just
Chicago was a true oval, wasn't it?
No,
Chicagoland?
No, Chicagoland was a D-shaped oval, but the thing that made Chicagoland interesting was the backstretch wasn't straight. It was kind of
it never. Yes,
that's what I thought. Yeah, that's what I thought it was an oval. Like it was like a real sweeping track. Yeah.
I love running Chicagoland in iRacing. It's so unique. Just how you just build that momentum. And you kind of go around the back. Man, if we could bring Chicagoland back somehow, that'd be amazing. Fuck the street race.
With the street race debacle coming up, but you never know.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a disaster for 3 years, and they won't be able to sell that property out in Juliet.
The street race may very well end this podcast.
It could. Hopefully it's good. I don't know. Do you guys want to? Speaking of complaining, you want to jump into the checkers and wreckers? We'll get our complaining.
Oh yeah. 3 wide for the lead. 1 lap to go.
It's this week's checkers and wreckers.
All right, since we started with Eric for the for the race grades, we'll start with Matt for the checkers and wreckers. What's your checkers for the race weekend, Matt?
All right, so I'm gonna shock some fans here of the show who know my disdain for one specific driver. My checkers is going to Harvick for taking the high road after he got taken out of the lead by Chastain. So I understand Chastain didn't make contact. If you go back, he definitely didn't make contact.
Yeah.
But he sure as shit manipulated the 4 cars' air enough in that corner where the 4 lost control.
Oh, yeah.
And Harvick could have ripped Ross like we've seen him do in the past when Harvick feels like he was wronged, but he didn't. And I don't know, maybe if it's because he's got 1 foot out the door and he's looking at retirement, but I was surprised by Harvick's reaction. So I give him a lot of shit. So I figured an early retirement gift, I'd throw some credit his way.
I have a tinfoil hat that he didn't get as upset because he did it to somebody at Daytona, so he knows how easy it is to for the air just to get these cars loose and turn you in a corner. Maybe, I don't know.
And the handling was a bastard for those guys all day. So that's the difference between Daytona and Talladega. You do have to have a ton of handling in your car at Atlanta, and I think Harvick probably knew, hey, any little bit of air it was detrimental, clean air and everything at that race where, you get into a bad spot and the air's off your car, you're going to be in for a ride.
All right. And how about your wreckers? Because I came into a conversation with you guys arguing back and forth before the show. And I go, I can't wait to figure out what you guys are arguing about. And you said it was your wreckers. So Phil, bring me back up to speed.
So I think this one's gonna promote a real good conversation with us. So my wreckers goes to NASCAR and NASCAR fans always butting heads.
Okay.
And it just seems like it happened a lot more this weekend than I've seen in the past, albeit it does happen a lot in the past as well. It seemed like it happened a lot this weekend. Not all, but a good majority of the fans did a ton of bitching this weekend, and there were NASCAR media members who did their fair share of complaining too. Some who run weekly polls about good races and whatnot were doing their fair share of bitching too.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that.
Yeah, he was bitching. He's been negative. It's Jeff Gluck. What the hell am I doing? He's not gonna. I don't care about calling him out. Jeff Gluck. I like Jeff Gluck a lot, but I feel like he's been negative a lot lately. Anyway, it just seems like there's been just so much complaining where every week we're either hearing that there's just not enough on-track action, or in this week's case, there's too much on-track action. Oh my God, the Xfinity race, the truck race, they're taking too long. There's too much going on. Yeah. And I just think a lot of NASCAR's fans don't seem to realize that, like, we have the best form of professional motorsports competition on the planet. F1 and IndyCar is follow the leader after lap 1, turn 1, 90% of the time. We don't want that, right? But here's where I'll pull back a little bit. This isn't all on the NASCAR fan, because NASCAR as an entity does a lot to promote this with the fans. Yeah. They do a lot of changing. They do a lot of, so Eric and I were talking about it, like, what would be a good example of what NASCAR is? And I came up with the analogy, NASCAR is the dog that's chasing its own tail. NASCAR is always trying to catch up to itself. They make a change, and then they're trying to catch up to that change by doing other things. And it just seems like you just got to let it go. Let the sport breathe. Let these teams catch up to the sport instead of NASCAR catching up to the sport. Let these teams and these engineers and these crew chiefs figure out these rules packages, figure out the new car, figure out these tracks, and catch up to it. And I just feel like NASCAR and its fans are at a big time odds right now. Like, you guys, I know Eric has a lot to say about this. Whitey, I'm sure you do too. So we can kind of, go from here. But I just feel like we're at a point right now in our sport where what the fans want, NASCAR isn't giving, and what NASCAR thinks is best for the fans isn't. And they listen to certain things, but they don't listen to others. And I don't know. I just feel like there's somewhere where we can meet kind of in the middle and both sides be happy.
All right.
I mean, I want to hear what Whitey has to say, because Matt, you and I did have this conversation before we started recording. So Whitey, like, do you kind of see where Matt and I are coming from here?
I'm not exactly sure. Because,
so for instance, like, you have. So what I was saying is, like, okay, like, in the last 5 years, there's been a lot of change.
There has been a lot of change all at once.
A lot more change in the last 3 or 4 years than the sport saw in the previous 3 decades.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot has changed.
With the
Which
old
isn't
car,
necessarily bad, but
it's just a lot all at once. Yeah.
Right. It's just the old car. They were trying to make the racing better with that old car.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they started messing around with the packages. We messed with the downforce. We had the 550 package. And then they even went as far as, hey, let's put PJ1 down. Let's put resin down. And they're making all of these changes. And this is from race to race.
Yeah.
At this point in time, like, 1 week they could have it down, the next week they won't. And then, no, this week we're going to run this package. And the next week they came out with a new package. And they're constantly working on it, which I don't mind that. I think you have to do that. You have to be innovative, right?
Yeah.
But when you have that constantly for the last 5 years and nothing that feels any kind of familiarity with what type of racing, that 1 week we could enjoy it, they make a change, the next week, you ruined it. You know what I mean? So it's like NASCAR, let it go for a little bit before you make another drastic change. And, like, with the new car, I thought they would have gave themselves. It was a perfect time to give yourself a clean slate.
Yeah.
Put out the new car. Don't change any of the racetracks, because why would you? Because you don't know how this new car is going to run on them, or how it's going to affect the racing and what the fans are even going to think of it. And I said it last year in the beginning of the podcast, where new car, I really wish they would just let it go as little as possible, as far as major changes, as far as changing the tracks. And, like, they already started changing the tracks 2-3 years ago, and they weren't even going to be using the same car that we are now. So, like Matt said, NASCAR is making these changes, but then they're not ever letting them, give them time to see what actually comes of them.
Well, I think there's a disconnect between the tracks and the car itself, where any changes you see at the track, that's the track promoter, that's the company. So like Atlanta, it wasn't NASCAR's decision to reconfigure. It was SMI and Marcus Smith's decision, you know? So it's what they thought that they should do to bring in more fans to that track.
Right.
So
they need to link up better instead of just the tracks trying to make money and, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Well, meanwhile, you had this plan to build a new facility over 3 years. Well, in that 3 years, the car changed. There's this, there's that. You have no idea what the hell that race is going to even look like. What if all short tracks suck? And then in the next 2 years, this car never gets better on short tracks, and we have 12 short tracks on the schedule because that's what people wanted. But the car didn't allow it to work. That's what I mean. Like, that's the dog chasing its tail. Like, one of those people, either the track promoters have to stop doing what they're doing and making changes to try to make profits themselves, or NASCAR has to be a better communicator with those tracks and tell them you can or can't do this. This is our vision, and this is the way we're going. What is your vision? So that at least we could get them in the same, frame. Right now, both their pictures are not. They're in different states right now.
You've got the broadcast. You've also got the broadcast companies too, NBC and Fox.
That plays a whole other thing.
So you've got all these entities that are trying to pull the strings, and then
you have to deal with the teams too.
Who's the common denominator that's always affected? Us, the fans.
The teams. Here's the thing. You got so many fucking cooks in the kitchen. That's the problem.
Yes.
So I could give you a weird analogy, but it's like when PennDOT paves a whole entire road, but the utility companies haven't updated any of their infrastructure underneath those roads for years, and then they tear the whole entire brand new road up. Where communication could have been planned ahead, but you gotta fix the water main when the water main breaks. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think what happened is, just without really putting too much thought into it, but I think what happened was we've been running the same car essentially for the last 40 years. The same technology and whatnot, where you have a stiff rear end out of a 1970 fucking muscle car, and it's been going around track for 40 years. You have all these things where the old car was engineered and updated about as much as you could get that old car, and that's why you constantly see rules changes and all that stuff. We saw rules package changes forever, it's the old adage, NASCAR fans hate two different things, the way things are and change, so it's like everyone's always looking to the past. You look at old NASCAR magazines from the 90s, and they're talking about how the racing was better in the 80s and they screwed it up. I could point to a Dale Earnhardt interview after a Talladega race where he goes, "Man, NASCAR screwed plate racing up forever with this rules package," and it was the rules package where they had the wicker on top or whatever, so it's this constant conversation that's never going to go away, and in fact, like, we thought it would with this new car, and it's not. Eric, you used to talk about it all last year, where it's like, finally we could get away from the conversation of the rules package. The problem is you have the quote unquote best engineers and best mechanics in the Cup garage trying to figure out these cars every week. Well, guess what? Those guys are going to figure something out, and then all of a sudden other teams are going to be left in the dust. So you always have to kind of update the rules package to keep competition fresh, or else you're going to have those races where Hendrick wins by 27 seconds because they lapped the entire field. It's just a fact, And I think the problem with this season so far has been that we left these engineers and everyone a whole year to figure this car out, and they have. So now we're starting to see the cream rise to the top once again, because even though we've only seen 4 or 5 races, we're seeing the same people up front. What's no about it though?
I think up to this point this season, the difference has nothing to do with who caught up to who. It's the fact that they're not losing wheels and the tires aren't blowing out. That's the only difference. I mean, there's been more cautions, and without the tire blowouts, that's what made those races last year an A and this year not an A, is because there's less restarts, there's less cautions, that fucks with people's strategy, that screws up the day, that helps people's day. it's a factor. I think last year's screw-ups really made the racing better. I think those tires blowing out and the extra cautions last year, it made for better racing.
Okay,
so we're plateauing now. We're coming to a point where now we know what to expect. We've fixed a lot of the major kinks, right, last year coming into this year, where now it's more or less coming down to who's got the better I don't want to say equipment because it's all freaking cookie cutter now, but who's got the more talent, who's got the better data, who's got the more sim time. That's what it's coming down to now. Eric's right. Last year we had a lot of crazy shit happening with tires blowing out, wheels coming off, mishandling cars because drivers were still trying to figure out the cars. Where they've fixed a lot of those kinks. They've had a year to fix all that. We don't really have that now. And so, yeah, we've kind of plateaued as far as that goes. But at the end of the day, we've still got the best form of racing. So I just think back to my original point is the level of complaining that I've seen this year so far. I don't want to say it's unwarranted, but to a certain point, we need to just sit back and appreciate what we have as a sport.
Well, yeah,
we could tie this in with the penalty situation. I think Whitey nailed it with his explanation. This just comes down to communication. I don't mind the packages. I don't mind the changing because you have to innovate. You have to get better. But while you're trying to get the car better, you can't also be changing the tracks. You know what I mean?
Well,
that's where the communication has to come in play. And I think you're 100% right about that, where the promoter of the tracks have to be on the same page and have the same, at least couple year view of where they want to go with it, or else you're never going to sync up.
And that just goes for like reconfigurations and stuff. I don't know how much the track has to say versus NASCAR has to say when they put something like PJ1 down or the resin or what. But I feel like those conversations really didn't happen much last year either. So like, I don't know.
Although too, and a lot of people, repaves, they take a while to get broken in.
They take a shit ton of time.
So repaves are notorious for sucking for the first few years.
Like the first 8-10 years, like a decade.
Yeah,
could
it
go
takes
by,
years. And then it's good for like 4 or 5, and then they're calling for a repave.
Exactly.
You only really get a small sweet spot window for these tracks to really perform.
And honestly, again, like I said before, it comes down to NASCAR just being behind on times on some of this stuff, where like a lot of these tracks, look at Fontana. It never had a repave. It was built and that was it. You look at Texas where they screwed it up. It's because it was built. They let it go. It needed a repave. We're like, oh, how do we freshen this up? Same thing in Atlanta. It comes to this time. And we're at a point in the sport where a lot of these 1.5-mile tracks, because they were built in the boom of the 1.5-mile tracks, now it's time that they need to be remodeled. Well, maybe the racing's not going to be that great at these tracks anymore for a while. Do you see the point I'm trying to make?
Why would you do that if you knew you were coming out with a new car? Is what I'm trying to say. Like, you're basically shooting yourself in the foot. Ooh, new car, boom. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you got to think too. Fucking COVID delayed the car by 2 years. I'm sure it delayed a lot of these plans for the tracks.
That should have helped them.
Well, yeah,
get on the same page.
Well, I mean, again, I don't know, man. Right now, I feel like we're the ones complaining about the complainers. I don't know. I'm fine with what the tracks are doing.
Complaining. It's that I'm just asking us to take a deep breath. Not us bumping our podcast. Well, us included, I guess, but us as NASCAR fans as a whole body, take a deep breath, look at what we have, and appreciate it for what, like, it just seems like that's my larger thing of what I guess I'm trying to say is it just seems like
we're not complaining. We're trying to figure out where the complaining is stemming from.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to find the answers to why these people are complaining. That's right. I'm trying to think of, okay, just like a solution. Like, that's what I'm trying to go back. What are they? Ooh, maybe this is a reason why that they're complaining. So I'm just trying to think of maybe why they would go this way. And, like the constant change. And like I said, the mentality of a fan nowadays where, they want the mayhem. They want crazy. Everything is scroll, doom scroll. Oh, 10-second clips of this, 13-second clips of that. And when you have a race that goes 3 hours before stage racing and you have lapped up to 13th place, where are you going to get a 10-second clip to put on your TikTok reel to get you clicks? You're not going to have it. You can't get that. So the mentality of the person, I think, is different today too, which affects and people, I'll call them the social media fans. I'll take a page out of Mike Joy's book, the keyboard warriors. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they really represent a lot of who the sport is as fans, and the most of them. Like, I really don't think, and like that's a problem as well. I think, like, Mike Joy, relax. Twitter is like 1% of your NASCAR fans, dude. Like,
so I'm glad you said that, because I was just about to bring that up to you, where I'm like, man, you guys are talking about people complaining on Twitter. The problem is we're on Twitter. We're too tapped into what everyone else is thinking.
Well, sometimes I think that is true. Like, we can be too tapped in and hear all of this stuff and be flooded with all this information. And sometimes you're right, Whitey. Like, it is an echo chamber of people that get that way and want to look at it for a certain view. But yeah, it's not a lot of people. And NASCAR, I just think in today's world, the people at the top, the brass or the TV or Fox, is saying, hey, look, we're getting these interactions on our social pages over this, and this. Bring this up on the broadcast, and like it's almost turning into a problem that way, where it's not really the majority of the fan base.
Here's the thing too that bothers me about just the Twitter and the perspective. Jeff Gluck's poll, it's yes or no. There's no in between. There's 20,000 votes. 52% said yes, 48% no. Now, there's a kid on NASCAR. Well, he's not a kid. He's an adult, but he's the iceberg. He does videos, and every week he does his own poll, and he includes good, great, average, below average, and bad. He had 10,000 votes on his poll. 13% said great, 48% good, 25 average, 9 below average, and 5% bad. So
that's a good poll. I would agree with that.
Exactly. So if you're thinking like, oh, the race was average, well, I'm not going to vote yes. I'm going to vote no on Gluck's poll, because I don't think average racing is very good. So like, there's a lot of gray area. You can't go.
Yeah.
And again, we're so fucking tapped in, man. We're like, we have NASCAR brain rot essentially. Where,
honest to God,
yeah.
So, we really do. We really do, because we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have the three of us, we have this podcast. Like, we're so tapped into the NASCAR world that it's like we see every little thing that's going on that. And it's tiring sometimes.
And we do it for the listener. So if you're sitting at home, I hope you appreciate that we drive ourselves insane throughout the week, looking at every little minutia of the sport, especially on social media. But like, I understand the point you guys are making, where it's like, yeah, it was a lot of change, like real quick, and some of it's not great, some of it is good. Like, just trust the process, man. We're what, 5 races in? We got 31 more
I'll bring
races.
It back to this. Before the next gen car, the theme was, this is the greatest
season ever.
And
it was a great season.
And we're like, it was. Oh my God, this is the greatest season. Nothing is going to beat this. The next gen car comes out, and all of a sudden we're like, this might be the greatest season ever. So now this year, But to that point,
my head though too, But to that point, 2019 was not that great of a season, I
remember what set me off a little bit with Gluck yesterday was that he sent out a tweet saying it's not a good sign if the fans are doing the wave under green. So Fox coming in or out of commercial, Fox showed like 10 fans out of tens of thousands of fans that were at the track trying to start the wave or whatnot. And like, out of those 10 fans, like 7 of them were children. Like, dude, what are you doing stoking the flames? Like, what are you trying to say? Like, oh, it's not a great sign when fans are trying to start a wave at a NASCAR race. Like, what are you trying to say, Jeff? Like, stop being so negative.
Also, I'm pretty sure the first NASCAR race I ever went to was a Daytona 500, and we did the goddamn wave, and it was fucking awesome. It was awesome.
It's cute. The
whole entire thing was doing the wave. It was a cool thing to experience. If you can't have fun at a sporting event and do the goddamn wave without being criticized that the product on track is boring, it wasn't.
I just feel like these NASCAR reporters like Jeff Gluck and others have a responsibility. Huh?
Gluck, like basically just say how you feel. Don't like gaslight through like couple fans doing the wave.
And then if you look at the comments, it's all like, oh, you know, this race sucks. Yeah, this, you know, it's like, dude, you're gaslighting these fucking morons.
So then that's what stems with it too, and it feeds those complainers into being like, ooh, yeah, he agrees with me. He agrees with me. So like, I thought he kind of has validation, you know, and it's.
I thought we saw a classic, typical super speedway style race where you have back and forth.
It's not enough to complain about it. That's what my point is. Like that race wasn't great, but it was not bad to the point where like all these fans are complaining as much as they were. Like we can move on from there, but I don't know. Just let's go see Joey Logano lap the field and win by 18 seconds next week, and then let's see what we're really complaining about.
All right, Eric, how about yours? What's yours checkers and wreckers for the weekend?
Well, mine are simple and quick. My wreckers goes to Bubba Wallace. It was just he even said it, rookie mistake.
He would wreck himself in the checkers and wreckers. He said rookie mistake.
Spun out on his own way early in the race, and I just think he could have really helped your driver, Whitey, at the end. I think he could have helped Christopher Bell at the end. Maybe he wouldn't have made that move because he wouldn't have had to make that move if he had more teammates around. It's nothing really. It was hard to find a record for me this week, so it was kind of just like, hey, he spun out. I didn't expect that from Bubba at a plate style super speedway race. It just seemed to me that it was just uncharacteristic of his racing as of late. So I had to give him my wreckers. And my checkers, I've been wrecking him and his team mostly, but man, EJ, I don't know if y'all saw it. Go on Twitter, I'm telling you.
It was awesome. Amazing.
Somebody put Freebird to it too, which was it made it even better. In that last lap, he went from 20th to 8th, and he just put his nose in the middle, and he just kept it in the middle and just made up spot after spot after spot. And it's my checkers because, goddamn, I need to feel something good because the last couple weeks he had the speed, but the finishes haven't been there. So finally, it was great to see him finish 8th. Noah finished 12th. So hopefully this stems a run of better finishes here for that Legacy Motor Club.
Yeah, and if you don't know the clip we're talking about, there's an in-car from Eric Jones showing that whole entire move. And I just retweeted it on our Bumper Run Instagram, or not Instagram, Twitter. So you could check that out. Retweet it on Instagram. I'm a fucking idiot. Anyways.
It's Monday. It's been a long week for all of us, and it's only Monday.
It has been. All right. My wreckers, kind of like what you guys said, I couldn't find much to wreck about this race, which is another sign why I gave it a plus at the end of the B, because I couldn't think of wreckers other than Christopher Bell jumping out of line a little too early, in my opinion. He left the rest of the Toyotas in the top lane to make a move for the win, but it was on the second to last lap. But all he did was give Logano the momentum on the bottom lane he needed. And then fucking Bell went back up top, and then Logano just kind of snuck right in front of him and slid up in front of him. I hate to play the what could have been game, but we had three strong Toyotas right in a line on the top lane, which was the dominant lane. Logano was far back. So I don't know if it was a miscommunication or what, but man, did it sting just because it was Logano to win. If it was anyone else, I think it would have been all right. But man, fucking Logano.
We got robbed an interesting situation too, because Reddick was under the weather yesterday, and if he had won that race, it would have been super interesting. Like, he was sick enough to the point where they had a relief driver, John Hunter Nemechek, ready to go in case Reddick couldn't complete that race. So if he won that race, it would have been interesting to see like how he would have handled the post race interview and stuff like that. You know?
That's a lot of hours and stuff to have to sit in victory lane and everything.
Yeah. Did they say what was wrong with him?
He said he just woke up with like a stomach bug earlier in the day. Apparently he had it for a couple days, but it was real bad around 6 a.m. I was listening to an interview with him with Danielle Trout and Larry Mack on Sirius XM, and he said like by the time they got going in the race, he was all right. So they just wanted to have
his adrenaline. Once his adrenaline started going and it got up to speed, it kind of he forgot all about it himself being sick in a way. Yeah.
But apparently he had a rough morning, according to him. My checkers
Been there
today. My checkers, gotta give it to Ryan Blaney, man. Went 3 laps down from speeding on pit road. Thanks to the big one, he was able to get his lap back with the lucky dog and a wave around and all sorts of stuff. And then he finished inside the top 10, which killed for the fantasy day, not my fantasy day, Bree's fantasy day. And I told her to keep Ryan Blaney in the garage and keep Kevin Harvick out. And then of course Harvick wrecked, because this was when Blaney was 3 laps down at the time. And then Harvick wrecked and Blaney got a top 10. And I heard about it. She's like, I don't know why I listened to you. So I'm going to stop giving her advice, but that was my checkers and wreckers for the weekend. And honestly, I don't have much else to add to the race, other than Logano had a real dominant car. Brad Keselowski looked fucking awesome all day long, too.
Josh Berry was in position. Josh Berry was in position, and he got taken out when Chastain screwed up the field there. God damn. I was like, oh, my God, he's right there. Like, here we go. Like, Josh is going to get a legitimate shot at this, and it got stolen from me. God damn it.
His car did continue on, though, which I was surprised with the shape of that car. It looked awful.
It was nice to see Brad and Joey racing up front, like you said, Whitey, clean.
Yeah. They have their history. Even as teammates, they have their history.
If there was any time that I was hoping and praying for Brad to fucking put him into the wall, it was right then and there. But RFK, I was 1 year off, boys. Chris Buescher had a dominating car too. Chris Buescher, he was my fantasy, hopeful there at the end. And then when he got caught up in it, my day was done. But man, RFK, that 17 and 6 all day they were dominating. And I saw it that Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski are in the top 10 when it comes to leading laps this year. And Brad Keselowski is the only one to lead a lap in all races this year.
We would be doing the NASCAR world an injustice if we didn't talk about the Brad and Denny video post-race.
Oh yeah. Hilarious.
Here, I'll retweet that one too on the old Twitter page.
So apparently after Brad got out of the car after the race yesterday, for whatever reason, a cameraman followed Brad out of the car through pit road over the wall to find himself a porta-john because old Brad had to go, apparently. Well, the camera sped up and you see people, coming and going from all the porta-johns around Brad. So it seems like he's been in there a while, right? So we can all assume what Brad had to do. And then here comes Denny walking up, minding his own business. Doesn't know Brad's in there. Brad didn't lock the door.
Why wouldn't you lock the door?
Why wouldn't you lock the door? Goes to open it, notice Brad's in there, and then closes it real quick. And it's just like we've all been in that situation before. Could you imagine opening up a porta-john and there's old Brad K taking a shit? It was just like a funny video is what it was.
So my favorite part about the whole entire thing, though, is they had a camera on Brad Keselowski's car as he got out of it, like on pit road, and you could audibly hear him go, "I gotta take a pee," and he walked away.
Yeah. So we were wrong. Okay.
And he went in with his helmet still on, too.
Yeah, he had everything on.
So, he must have just unzipped. He was letting it fly. I want to know what was going through Denny's mind as he opens up the door and just sees a full helmet standing there.
You guys are, there's no fly, dude. He had to take his whole fire.
Does it zip low enough to get it?
No, it's belly button, bro. That only zips to the belly button, I would imagine.
So there's a good chance that Brad had his fire suit down to his ankles.
He's sweating. Oh, he was definitely sweating. He was having a hard time in there.
It was not a good scene, I'm assuming. What Denny opened that door.
I bet it was just like Whitey in Daytona 2 years ago, is what I imagine Denny Hamlin saw when he opened up that porta-john.
I don't know what that means. We're gonna leave that story for off air. Thank you. But But yeah, big props to Brad Keselowski, RFK in general. I was so sad when I saw Harvick turning, and I had Harvick in my fantasy, and then I just see Buescher T-bone the shit out of him. I go, there goes my day. There goes my whole entire day. But yeah, other than that, we saw some comers and goers. Chevys, I don't know. I didn't really see much out of the Chevys on Sunday.
Fords were dominant, man, and then Toyotas were right there at the end as well.
I do have one thing that I noticed. I heard a couple drivers say, and it kind of reminded me of Kenseth back in the day. He would always, quote unquote, I don't know, complain about it or not. But Noah Gragson, I was listening to an interview with him afterward, and he was just like, upset that you get punished for trying to make a move at Atlanta with this new style of race there. Yeah. And when, and Kenseth would always say that too, because he would always be the one at Daytona, the running single file. He would pop out of line, say, come on, come with me. I want to get up front. And nobody goes with him, gets back in line, tries it again. Nobody goes with him. And I heard a couple drivers say that, like, hey, like, kind of sucks. Like, I wanted to go, no one else is willing. So it's almost like, was the racing, do they tell them, hey, keep calm, or to go, not to go? Like, I wonder what the driver style has to do with that, because Noah seemed pretty upset that he kind of is like, hey, I try to make something happen. And he goes, I end up in the back of the pack, and that is kind of shitty when you trying to make it exciting and go too wide and pull a line up underneath and no one goes with you. So,
that's interesting, because I heard a couple guys talk about that. I know Alex Bowman had a big problem with it with Ross Chastain, where their spotters made an agreement and they were going to stick together, and then Ross completely bailed out of the plan on him. And we saw Bowman, take a big hit and drop real quick. I know on that final restart, Reddick was he made a deal with Brad Keselowski on the radio, and that's why he tucked in behind him instead of starting on the front row. And then Brad kind of fucked him by blocking both lanes, going back and forth. Yeah. But of course, that's Brad just doing what Brad's going to do, I tell you what, honorary checkers. I know we're past the checkers. I got to give my checkers to TJ Majors. I've never listened.
That was fun to listen to.
Yeah. I never listened to his radio when he was spotting for Dale Jr., but man, the information that he was throwing out there so quick. I'm like, no wonder why Brad Keselowski is as good at plate tracks, and why Joey Logano was as good at plate tracks for a long time too, because they both utilized him. So yeah, just other than that, I got nothing else to add to this race. You guys?
We're on to COTA.
But first, we got to make a stop and talk about the last place driver. Of course, everyone loves to talk about the winner on a Monday, one Joey Logano. But here on the Bumper Run podcast, we also like to highlight the loser of the race. And for the second week in a row, it was one BJ McLeod. This time, he made it 189 laps before becoming a victim of the big one. So no mechanical failures for him. He did wreck out in qualifying, though, so he started from the back regardless. Just a rough go for old BJ McLeod. And now we move on to the pick lanes, where I feel like we kind of got into the woods with it in the checkers and wreckers. But this was originally for last week. Of course, last week we saw a rules change when it came to the short track package, and I wanted to get Eric's opinion on it too. So we saw a rule change to the downforce package for all wet weather tracks. I'm not sure if we could gauge a difference in one weekend, but it made for an interesting storyline to speculate around. Dale Jr. brought up midweek rule changes on his podcast, and it made me wonder. I know I don't like competition rule changes midweek, like uncontrolled tire rules and whatnot. But what about package changes midweek to keep the teams on their toes? And I have a feeling I know what Eric's answer is going to be. So, Eric, what do you think about that one?
If it helps the sport, if it helps the racing, I'm all for it. I don't like knee-jerk midweek reactions over something dumb. So if it's going to help, I guess I would say yes, but I don't think that will ever happen anytime soon, because it just costs too much. That's the whole reason for this new car, is to save costs. So week to week changes would absolutely cripple these teams.
I don't know if it would though, if they're just like small adjustments where it's like, hey, you got to run this much skew or something like that, like just,
like a ride height adjustment, something like that.
Yeah, it's like, your car has to be this minimum, or hey, we're swapping out the spoilers this week for a different blade because NASCAR hands out the spoilers
like,
before
hey,
the race.
You can't go below 10, PSI air pressures changes or something like.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, not like a complete parts change. I could see that.
Yeah. How about you, Matt? What do you think about that?
It's tough for me because again, we go back to NASCAR, being the dog that chases its own tail. Just, if we're constantly changing and we're always trying to catch up with ourselves, we're never going to accomplish anything. But on the other hand, if we're making changes that's going to promote better racing, more competitive racing, then I am all for it. So I think there's a fine line where, we're not making changes all the time, but if there's something major that needs to be addressed and it can be addressed between races, then yeah, they need to do that. If it's for safety or for competitive reasons, for one of those two things.
I personally, like, that's why I brought it up earlier. I think maybe it's just the teams are kind of figuring this car out, and sure we're not seeing the parity that we thought we were going to see again. And I would like little tweaks though, small adjustments, nothing major. Cause like we said before, you change one thing and you might end up breaking another. So kind of keep everything in that small box and do slight adjustments here and there. I think it could be interesting, but now we are on our way to Austin, Texas.
Marty, you've got to come back with me.
Where?
The next NASCAR Cup race. It's the weekend preview.
And of course, we are heading to the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, Saturday. And Saturday, we have Trucks and Xfinity. It's another doubleheader. Trucks on track 130 on FS1 for the XPEL 225. And Xfinity takes the stage at 5 on FS1 for the Pit Boss 250. Cup practice, we have Friday night, Friday at 2:05. I'm not sure if that's local time or what. I thought that was interesting, a midday Friday practice, and then qualifying starts on Saturday at 11:30. Sunday, we have the race at 3:30 on Fox. It's the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix. Matt, does DraftKings have any numbers for us yet?
Nope. Don't know what they're doing. They're slacking.
You know what? I feel like this started happening at the end of last season.
It did.
Yeah. I think the sports books, they're just trying to be smarter with their odds now. They're not throwing them first thing in on a Monday. Maybe they're doing them on Tuesday or something now. So we're going in the dark. To recap, last week, Matt, you picked Chris Buescher. He got you 10 points, of course, involved in that accident with Kevin Harvick and whatnot. Eric, I picked Blaney. He got me 37 points. That puts me in second. And Eric, you picked Brad Keselowski. Almost got you the win. He got you 45 points. So you will pick last. I will pick second. And Matt will pick first. And if you want to go we'll go with the full season points right now. It is a intense battle between Matt and Eric, only separated by 5 points. And then I'm back like 20 some points. So I'm trying to make up some ground there. Matt, who you picking for COTA?
So I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm going with the guy who's got the most laps led in the Cup Series since the Cup Series started coming to COTA. He's got the best average rating of a 125.9. He's got 2 top 5 results. The only other person who has 2 top 5 results at COTA is Chase Elliott. He's on the old bench, so we don't have to worry about him this weekend, unfortunately. This guy also won last year after we saw him punt AJ Allmendinger and Bowman to the moon on the last lap. So I am taking public enemy number 1, Ross Chastain.
Okay. All right. I like it. I just wonder if someone's going to give him some payback this weekend.
I just made that nickname up, by the way, him being in the 1, public enemy number 1.
I like that. Wow. It's very clever. I enjoy that one a lot. I was going to pick Tyler Reddick because he got the pole. The first race we went here, he got a top 5. The second race, but I already picked him once this year, and we're only choosing guys 3 times. So I am gonna go with someone else that's really good at road courses. Usually is there. I'm going with Tyler Reddick. I have to do Tyler Reddick, right?
Wow, dude.
I thought you were going
only
to
pick Reddick one more time the rest of this year. What are you gonna do?
I don't know, but you want to know what? He finished in the top 5 the last 2 weeks. The Toyotas are pretty strong. I feel like COTA is his track to win early on and get that monkey off of his back and just kind of float through the rest of the season. So I'm going with Tyler Reddick. I'm gonna burning him.
I'm going with the 20 car. I'm going with Whitey's other favorite driver, Christopher Bell.
All right. How about there was a bit of controversy at the end of the race. I don't know if you guys saw the screenshots, but I think Christopher Bell actually came in second yesterday.
I heard this.
Yeah,
and they only have 40 minutes to contest it, is what I read too. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, there's some pictures right at the line where
it's clear. It's a foot difference.
But
it's not close.
But the thing is, the start finish line is the yellow line inside the stripes, and the picture getting there is a little blurry where it's hard to tell for sure. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure the transponders are in the back of the car, and Brad Keselowski only beat him by 0.00 like 1 second or something like that. So there's a little bit of something there. But Eric, I like it. I like the Christopher Bell pick. Honestly, I was buying time to try to think of someone to pick other than Tyler Reddick. And I
wanted Bowman. My gut said Bowman, but when you didn't pick Christopher Bell, I kind of just spit it out.
I thought about picking Suarez, but
dude, I'm so big this year on going with the hot hand. Who's hot? Who's now?
Yeah.
Who's racing well? Yep. Stick with them.
All right. Well, we will find out. We're 4 races into the 2023 season, and we have 4 different winners now. Ricky, I didn't adjust this. We are 5 races into the 2023 season, and we have 4 different winners. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Kyle Busch, William Byron, and Joey Logano all so far have themselves locked into the playoffs. Could it be Christopher Bell? Could it be Tyler Reddick, or could it be Ross Chastain? We will find out this Sunday, 3:30 on Fox for the EchoPark Automotive Grand Prix, and we will break it all down for you right here on the Bump and Run Podcast Monday night. As always, for Matt the Statman Reilly, for Eric Daytona Ron, I'm Michael D. White saying have a good night.